Chosen one, listen closely. What you're about to hear is not a coincidence, not a video that appeared on your screen by chance. This is a divine interruption. Heaven does not disturb an ordinary night without reason, and if these words have reached you right now, it is because something you have carried in silence for far too long is finally being answered. Last night, the family member who abandoned you, the one who chose distance over relationship, silence over honesty, convenience over blood, was judged. Not by you, not by an argument you finally won, not by a confrontation you finally had the courage to start, by God Himself. And what happened to them in the quiet hours of last night is now being revealed to you, because you were never meant to carry this abandonment without understanding why it happened, and without watching the weight of it finally return to where it belongs. Do not close this message. Do not scroll past it, because what is about to be uncovered will explain the holidays you sat through with an empty chair beside you, the calls that never got returned, and the ache of loving someone who decided you were easy to walk away from. This is not about revenge. This is about truth. And the truth, chosen one, has already begun to move. For a long time, you told yourself it was temporary, a rough patch, a misunderstanding that would eventually smooth itself out the way family disagreements usually do. You gave them excuses you would never have accepted from anyone else, because they were family, and family was supposed to mean something permanent. You waited by the phone on birthdays that came and went without a message. You showed up to gatherings hoping this would be the year things felt normal again, only to leave feeling more invisible than when you arrived. You kept the door open long after they had already walked through it and closed it behind them. And the cruelest part was never the distance itself. The cruelest part was watching them stay close to everyone else in the family, laughing, showing up, being present, while you were the one person they decided did not deserve that same effort. God saw every one of those empty chairs. Heaven counted every unanswered message you sent, because your heart refused to believe that blood could really walk away from blood. And none of it, chosen one, none of it went unnoticed. Before we go further into what happened to them last night, I want you to do something. If you feel in your spirit that this message is for you, comment 777 below. Right now, as a declaration that you receive this word. Like this video so it reaches someone else who has been sitting in the same silence you have sat in for years. Subscribe to this channel, because what I'm about to share with you next goes even deeper than what you already know. And you do not want to miss what heaven reveals in the days ahead. This is only the beginning of what is being uncovered tonight. To understand the judgment that reached them last night, we have to go back to where the abandonment actually began. It never begins with the final silence, the blocked number, the family event you were quietly uninvited from. It begins in small, quiet decisions a person makes long before the relationship fully collapses. First comes the excuse, small and forgivable at first, a missed call blamed on a busy week, a skipped visit blamed on exhaustion. Then comes the pattern, the same excuse repeated so many times, it stops being an excuse and becomes a choice. Then comes the comfort of distance, because once someone realizes that walking away costs them nothing, that you will keep reaching out, no matter how many times you are ignored, they stop feeling the weight of what they are doing. Your presence became something they assumed would always be there, so they stopped protecting it. Familiarity did not build loyalty in them, it built carelessness, and carelessness, left unchecked for long enough, always hardens into something that looks a great deal like abandonment. Your family member did not wake up one day and decide to erase you. They walked into that decision one small avoidance at a time, telling themselves each missed moment was harmless until the moments became a pattern, and the pattern became a wall neither of you ever officially agreed to build. Yet both of you eventually had to live on opposite sides of. What started as being too busy became being unavailable. What started as being unavailable became being unreachable. What started as being unreachable became a silence so complete that even mutual family members stopped mentioning your name around them. Because everyone had quietly accepted an absence that was never supposed to be permanent. And here is what they did not understand. Every abandonment, no matter how quietly it is carried out, is still being witnessed by someone who never looks away. They believed that because you stopped confronting them, you had stopped noticing. They believed that because you kept showing up to family events with a smile, the wound underneath it had somehow healed on its own, and for a season, they were right, because you protected them from the full weight of your pain out of a loyalty they never matched. That loyalty was not weakness, chosen one. That loyalty was the evidence of a heart that understood the meaning of family even when the other side had forgotten it. But heaven was already watching, already recording, already preparing the moment when the imbalance between what you gave and what you received would finally be addressed on a timeline you could not control and they could not avoid. You remember the specific moments, don't you? The family photo you were cropped out of without anyone bothering to explain why, the group chat you were quietly removed from, the wedding, the funeral, the ordinary Sunday dinner where your name came up and someone changed the subject a little too quickly. You remember driving home from a gathering, wondering what you had done to deserve being treated like a stranger by people who share your last name. Your childhood, your history. That version of you was not being dramatic. That version of you was not imagining slights that were not real. That version of you was simply a person whose spirit could feel a rejection that everyone else around you was too uncomfortable to say out loud. Heaven saw every one of those drives home. Heaven did not look away from your pain the way your own family did. Tell me something. Have you ever felt, deep in your spirit, long before it became undeniable, that this relationship was already gone even while everyone still pretended it wasn't? A quiet knowing that showed up at family gatherings that used to feel warm and now felt like performances? That feeling was not bitterness. That was discernment, planted in you by God, preparing you to eventually stop begging for a seat at a table that had already decided it did not want you there. If you have felt that, comment "I received this" below. And ask yourself honestly, do you believe God reveals the truth of a relationship before your heart is fully ready to accept it, the same way He is revealing it to you right now? The distance did not stay comfortable for them forever, because nothing built on avoidance ever does. It began to crack in small places first. A mutual family member finally said something out loud that everyone had been thinking privately for years. A gathering felt noticeably smaller, quieter, less alive without the very person they had pushed away. And others began to notice the absence, even if they could not fully name why it mattered. A private moment of reflection crept in during a late night when the house was empty and the noise of everyday distractions could no longer drown out the truth. Guilt is a heavy thing to outrun forever, even for people who have convinced themselves they made the right choice by walking away. Somewhere in the middle of building a life that excluded you, they started noticing the cost too, though for very different reasons than you did. You mourned a relationship you were still fighting to save. They began, slowly, to mourn the version of themselves that used to know how to show up for the people who loved them. There is a question I know has crossed your mind more than once, even if you have never said it out loud to anyone. You have wondered what you did, searched your own memory for the exact moment you became easy to discard. Was it something you said? Was it a version of yourself that was too much, too sensitive, too needy for a family that preferred convenience over honesty? Chosen one, stop searching for that answer, because it does not exist inside you. What is missing was never in you. It was in them, a limitation they carried long before you were born into that family. Passed down quietly through generations that never learned how to stay, how to repair, how to choose someone even when it was inconvenient. You cannot heal a pattern that started decades before you by shrinking yourself smaller and smaller, hoping eventually you will finally fit into a love that was never built wide enough to hold you the way you deserved. You were never too much. You were simply standing in front of people whose capacity had already been used up long before you ever asked anything of them. If you feel like this video is getting long, I need you to stay with me right here, because the next part is the entire reason this message was sent to you tonight. Everything you have heard so far was only the setup. What comes next is the judgment itself. Last night, chosen one, the judgment arrived. Not with a dramatic confrontation staged in front of an audience. Not with a public apology forced out of guilt. It arrived the way heaven usually moves, quietly, precisely, and completely. The comfort they had been living in, the comfort of believing that walking away from you cost them nothing, finally came face to face with the truth of what it had actually cost. Maybe it was a quiet evening where the house felt too empty, and the reason for that emptiness became impossible to ignore. Maybe it was a conversation with someone else in the family who finally said what needed to be said. Maybe it was simply the weight of years of avoidance becoming too heavy to keep carrying without acknowledging where it came from. However it happened, this is what matters. The peace they built by erasing you from their life was never real peace. It was silence mistaken for resolution, and last night that silence finally broke. Picture it for a moment, not to relive your pain, but to understand how completely this has already turned. Somewhere, in an ordinary house, on an ordinary night, the comfort they had been living in for months or years finally cracked. A quiet conversation that landed harder than expected. A question about you that they could not answer without discomfort rising in their chest. A silence at the dinner table that lasted a few seconds too long. The kind of silence that reveals more than words ever could. There was no more room to change the subject. No more distractions left to reach for. No more time to keep pretending the absence they created did not matter to anyone, including themselves. The peace they built by walking away came apart in a matter of minutes last night, because truth does not need very long once it finally arrives. It only needs a quiet moment left unguarded, and heaven has a way of finding exactly that moment at exactly the right time. And here is the part most people never think about. Even the relationships they protected by choosing distance from you, the ones they told themselves were easier, less complicated, less demanding, could not give them what an honest relationship with you once offered. A person who is capable of abandoning one family member without remorse carries that same capacity into every other relationship they hold, whether they realize it or not. What felt like relief in walking away from you slowly reveals itself as a pattern they cannot escape. A coldness that eventually shows up with someone else too. A reputation within the family for being the one who disappears when things get difficult. They are learning now, in real time, what it costs to treat connection as disposable. Trust, once someone watches you discard it easily, does not rebuild itself quickly. And the people around them who witnessed how easily they let you go will quietly wonder how easily they could be let go too. Stay with me, because this is the part I need you to understand fully before we go any further. And it changes how you see everything that has happened to you. The judgment that reached them last night was never designed to destroy them out of cruelty. It was designed to break the illusion that walking away from family carries no consequence, so that everyone still living inside that illusion, including you, could finally see clearly. Scripture teaches that whatever a person plants, that is exactly what they will eventually harvest, and no one is exempt from that law, not even the people who share your blood. They planted distance, and distance always grows into isolation eventually, even if it takes years to fully bloom. They planted silence, and silence always collapses under its own weight the moment life forces them to face what they have lost. This is not cruelty from heaven, this is order. This is the universe insisting that the people we discard do not simply disappear from the moral weight of the choice made against them. If this is resonating with you right now, comment 777 again. Because I want to know how many of you are watching this and feeling like heaven just answered a question you have carried about your own family for years. Share this with someone you know who has been abandoned by someone who was supposed to protect them, because they need to hear that being forgotten by one person does not mean being forgotten by heaven. Now, let's talk about what this means for you, because this message was never only about them. It was about you, and about the life waiting for you on the other side of this rejection. For a long time, you may have asked yourself what you did to deserve being treated like an afterthought by your own family. Why weren't you enough to fight for? Why did they choose distance when closeness was sitting right in front of them every single time you reached out? Chosen one, hear this clearly. Their abandonment was never a measurement of your worth. It was a revelation of their capacity. A person does not walk away from family because that family member failed to be lovable. A person walks away because something broken inside them, often something inherited long before you were ever born, taught them that leaving is easier than repairing, that silence is easier than honesty, that distance is easier than doing the difficult work relationships require. You did not create that brokenness. You were simply standing close enough to be wounded by a pattern that started generations before you existed. There is a kind of pain, chosen one, that does not exist to punish you. It exists to wake something up inside you that had been sleeping for far too long, quietly convinced that you had to earn belonging from people who were supposed to give it freely. The ache you carried through this abandonment was never wasted. It was doing something underneath the surface, the same way pressure works on something valuable, refining it, revealing what it is truly made of. Pain has a strange way of getting our attention when comfort never could. It interrupts the noise. It forces us to ask real questions instead of comfortable ones. Questions like whether belonging was ever meant to be begged for in the first place. And in that interruption, something in you has been quietly rebuilding, becoming steadier, becoming wiser, becoming someone who understands that family is not only defined by blood, but by who consistently chooses to show up. Let me ask you honestly, and answer me in the comments if this is true for you. Do you feel, even now, in the middle of this rejection, that you are somehow becoming stronger than you were before all of this happened? That the version of you walking out of this season is not smaller, but freer, not abandoned, but finally released from chasing people who were never going to turn around? If that is true for you, type "I am rising" in the comments right now, because I believe declarations carry weight, and I believe heaven honors the words we choose to speak over our own lives. Here is what I need you to understand about forgiveness, because this is where many people get stuck, especially with family. Releasing bitterness does not mean pretending the abandonment did not happen. It does not mean forcing yourself back into a relationship that only causes you pain, and it does not mean explaining away their absence to protect a family image that was never protecting you. Forgiveness is not for them, it is for you. Holding on to bitterness does not punish the person who left. It only keeps you tied to the very rejection you're trying to heal from, replaying it, reliving it, letting one relationship define your understanding of every relationship that comes after it. Letting go is not saying what happened was acceptable. It is saying you refuse to let their choice control how you love, trust, and build your life going forward. You are allowed to forgive them in your heart while still keeping healthy distance in your life. You are allowed to release the anger while still protecting your peace from people who have shown you exactly who they are. The consequences reaching them now are not something you have to manage or witness up close. Heaven is handling the justice. Your only assignment now is healing. And healing, chosen one, does not happen overnight, but it does happen. It happens in the mornings you choose to build a life that does not revolve around waiting for people to finally choose you. It happens the first time a family gathering passes, and you realize you did not spend the entire evening checking the door, hoping they would walk through it. It happens the day you build a new kind of family. Not necessarily by blood, but by choice. People who show up consistently, who remember your birthday without being reminded, who make room for you without making you feel like an inconvenience. Every one of those moments is proof that what was broken in you is being rebuilt into something even stronger than what existed before. The version of you that existed before this abandonment believed love had to be earned from people who were supposed to give it freely. The version of you being formed now understands that real belonging never requires you to shrink, chase, or beg. Healing also means learning to sit with the empty chair without filling it with false hope every single time. In the beginning, every holiday, every gathering, every quiet anniversary of the last time you truly felt like family brings the ache back to the surface. But slowly, if you let it, that empty chair stops representing loss and starts representing space. Space you get to fill with people who actually want to be there. Space that no longer waits on someone who has already made their choice clear. Many people spend years hoping the empty chair will fill itself back in. Heaven is not asking you to keep waiting. Heaven is asking you to notice who else has been standing nearby this entire time, patiently waiting for you to finally see them. There will be days that still feel hard even after everything I have just told you. And I want you to know in advance that those days do not mean you are moving backward. Grief over a living relationship is different from grief over a loss, and it does not follow a straight line. Some mornings you will feel completely at peace with what happened, and by evening a memory, a photograph, a familiar smell from a childhood home will knock the wind out of you again. That is not weakness. That is simply what healing from something real actually looks like. Give yourself permission to have both kinds of days, the strong ones and the heavy ones, without judging either of them. Heaven is not measuring your healing by how quickly you get over it. Heaven is measuring your healing by whether you keep choosing peace over the exhausting effort of chasing people who left on purpose. Before we move into the final part of this message, I want to remind you why this matters so much. Somewhere out there, someone else is sitting exactly where you once sat, wondering if their family will ever come back around, wondering if they are foolish for still hoping, still believing that heaven sees what other people refuse to acknowledge. Comment 7771 one more time if you believe that. Share this video with them. Let them know that being let go by people who were supposed to hold on tighter does not mean they were never worth holding. There is something else I want you to hear before we close, because this is the part that separates temporary relief from lasting peace. The judgment that reached them last night was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new season for you. One built on chosen belonging instead of inherited obligation, one built on relationships that require honesty instead of performance, one built on a bond with yourself that no longer depends on someone else's willingness to show up. You are being prepared for something better than what you had, not because your family was worthless, but because what is coming for you was never meant to grow inside a relationship that had already stopped nourishing you. New seasons require new soil. Heaven is clearing yours right now, even in the middle of this pain, even while family gatherings still feel heavy some days. Think of it like a tree that has been growing too long in soil that could no longer feed it. It looks like loss when the roots are finally pulled up and moved somewhere new. It feels like emptiness in the space where it used to stand, but underneath the surface, something better is already being prepared. Ground that can actually hold what you were created to become, instead of soil that slowly starved you, while everyone insisted it was still nourishing enough. That is exactly what this season is doing in your life right now. Even on the days it feels like nothing good is happening at all. What feels like emptiness is actually preparation. What feels like silence is actually heaven working where you cannot yet see. I want you to speak this over your life with me now, out loud if you can, or quietly in your spirit if that is where you are today. I release the weight of chasing people who chose to walk away. I release the nights I spent questioning my worth, because family I loved decided I was easy to leave. I release the version of myself that shrank at every gathering, hoping to finally be noticed by people who had already made their choice. I choose truth over comfortable silence. I choose healing over the exhausting work of earning belonging. I choose to trust that heaven sees every hidden rejection and answers every hidden wound in its own perfect timing. What was done to me quietly has been brought into the light, and I will not carry shame for an abandonment that was never mine to carry. I am not defined by who left me. I am defined by how I rise after being left. I forgive without forcing reconciliation. I release without reopening a door that was never safe to walk back through. I walk forward in peace. I walk forward in clarity. I walk forward into the family I choose, not only the family I was given. Nothing hidden will remain hidden. Nothing done against me in silence will follow me into my future. My worth was never determined by who stayed and who left. My value did not decrease because someone else lacked the capacity to show up. This is my season to heal, to rise, and to become exactly who I was created to be, whole, discerning, and free. I will not shrink myself to make someone else's absence feel smaller. I will not mistake obligation for love or blood for belonging. I will guard my peace the way I once guarded relationships that did not guard me back. I will build a family rooted in choice, in consistency, in people who show up without being begged to. I will not let one abandonment convince me that I am unworthy of being chosen, because bitterness lies and tells us that one rejection defines every relationship still ahead of us. I choose to stay soft where it is safe to be soft and strong where I need to be strong. I choose to believe that what heaven is building for me now is better than what was taken, not a smaller circle, but a truer one, rooted in honesty from the very beginning this time. My future does not belong to the people who let me go. My future belongs to me and to the God who never once looked away while I was left standing alone. If you received this message today, comment 777 one final time, so that heaven and everyone watching knows you are standing in agreement with this truth. Like this video, not for me, but for the next person who needs to know that being forgotten by family does not mean being forgotten by heaven. Subscribe to this channel because there are more messages coming that will speak directly into the season you are walking through right now. Messages that will keep confirming what your spirit already senses is true. Share this with someone who needs to hear tonight that the truth always finds its way into the light, that justice does not require your hands to be fulfilled, and that the people who left you do not get the final word over your story. God does. And He has already begun writing the next chapter, the one where you are no longer defined by who walked away, but by who you become because of how you chose to rise. Stay awake, stay open, and stay ready, because the very absence that once broke you is about to become the very space where something far better finally has room to grow.